Is it true that guns are dangerous, but not having one is even more dangerous? Stay tuned. Hi, I'm Sue Jeffers for Libertarian Viewpoint. Libertarianism is all about liberty, the exercise of freedom that doesn't impinge on the rights of others. We constantly hear the drum roll of government solutions. This show's purpose is to allow you to see for yourself why non-government solutions are a better alternative. Today our guest is John Caile. Everything you wanted to know about guns. Hello, John. Welcome.
Hi, Sue. Good to see you again.
Why don't you tell our viewers just a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Well, I come from a very political family. My grandfather was a famous criminal court judge in the city of Chicago. My great-grandfather was a political power broker. He was a Democrat, but as somebody once said, the Democrats of his day would be conservative Republicans or Libertarians today. I came to Minnesota in February of 1995. The second day I was here, I was almost the victim of an attempted mugging. I bluffed my way out of it. Essentially, I had the guy convinced that I actually was carrying a gun, and he took off. Now, about 5 minutes afterwards, I was shaking like a leaf, so I went to talked to a couple of people, and they said, well, you know, in this state, we actually do have a carry permit law. It's pretty hard to get one, but I said, okay. So I went down to my, at the time I lived in Minnetonka when I moved here, and went to the police chief and applied, and when he handed me the application, the desk sergeant said, well, you can fill this out, but I wouldn't bother if I were you, and that kind of caught my eye. I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, the chief doesn't like to give them out. I said, what do you mean he doesn't like to give them out? I mean, I've never been in trouble with the law. I'm a good citizen. I've come here to work for Carlson Companies, this big company here in Minnesota. And he said, well, yeah, but the chief has to decide if you need one or not. I said, now, wait a minute. How does he decide if I need one? And then he went through all the rigmarole that you're probably all familiar with. So I filled everything out, sent it in, and promptly in about 10 days got a letter of rejection. I wrote a 3-page letter to then Governor Arnie Carlson. And it was a very nice, printed out letter, hand signed in an envelope with a stamp. And I described my travails. Now, I've gotten letters back from 3 American presidents, numerous governors and legislators, both state and congressional. I didn't even get one of those little cards that says, thank you for contacting the governor. And then years later, I met him on the set of one of the TV stations here, and he offered to shake my hand, and I did kind of limply. I said, Governor, I said, you blew it for me when I first moved here. He said, what do you mean? I explained the story to him, and he tried to hem and haw and talk about how his staff didn't do this. I said, Governor, a hand-signed letter in an envelope with a stamp is, you probably know, the highest form of communication in politics. It's the one that lands on the president's desk. I said, for whatever reason, I never even got an acknowledgement. And I said, and you know what they say, the buck stops here. And then it was a very awkward silence after that.
And then you spent...
And that's when I got involved with the movement. I've been shooting since I was 8 years old. I've been teaching firearm safety and combat training for about 35 years now. And I got involved with what was then called Conceal Carry Reform, now the organization working to change the laws. Now, we now call ourselves the Gun Owner Civil Rights Alliance, because now that the carry law is passed, our focus is more general in terms of protecting our rights to own and carry firearms. So that's pretty much how I got to Minnesota and how I got involved locally in the political scene. And I've met a lot of great people. As you well know from working with the legislature, there's some good people over there, and there's some that are not so good. Okay. So it's been an education.
Yeah. Oh, it's always an education over there. I keep telling everyone, when the legislature's in session, nobody's safe, as I paraphrase Mark Twain.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about, there are so many misconceptions out there about gun ownership, about what you can do, what you can't do, who can carry, who can't carry. And I want to talk about, before we get to there, I want to talk about the initial battle of getting the carry law passed in the state of Minnesota twice, which was what, almost 10 years ago now?
Right.
8 years ago. And it was funny because I was over at the Capitol that day. And I walk in, and there are all these Democrats running around in bulletproof vests.
I remember that.
And I'm like, what did I miss? What is going on here? And all of a sudden it dawned on me, oh, the Kerry bill is going to be heard today. So why don't you talk just a little bit about the Kerry bill getting passed?
Well, we finally got it passed in spring of 2003 after 9 years working on it. And this work was started originally by Professor Joe Olson, David Gross, people like that, even before I got here. I just got involved in, as I say, 1995. We finally got it passed. And then, of course, there was a challenge by the churches. Now, the interesting thing about that challenge is we didn't sue the churches because they didn't want to put up a sign. They sued us because they thought we demanded that they put it. There was a specific wording in the law about for private businesses and establishments that don't want people to carry guns. You know, we are big libertarian property rights people. That's fine if you want to do that. And to make a long story short, for the only sixth time in its history, the Minnesota Supreme Court used the single subject rule. You know, it was sort of like you're on a motorcycle going 63 miles an hour in a 55 zone, and everybody else is going 63 or more, and they decide to pull you over, but nobody else. You know, so we knew that it was a politically motivated decision. So we went back and actually passed it by a greater margin in both the House and the Senate, again in 2005. Now, naturally, every time any state wants to pass what's called a shall issue permit law, the same arguments come out of the woodwork. Everyone will be shooting each other at stop signs over parking spaces. Every altercation in a restaurant will turn into a shootout, the Wild West.
Every Viking game.
Every Viking, the same thing. And of course, none of that happened. Were there a few errant permit holders who did some things they shouldn't have done? Yes. But the percentage is so tiny as to be almost statistically insignificant. Permit holders are, by and large, the most law-abiding citizens in every area of their lives. Permit holders don't even get DWIs at anywhere near the rate that the average sampling of the citizenry would get. So we pretty much once again proved we were right, they were wrong. We now have over 92,500 permit holders in the state, and they are, for the most part, dramatically better behaved than all of their other citizens put together. So
92,000 permit holders.
And it really hasn't slacked off. It's continuing to grow kind of steadily every month. Yeah. And I've taught over 3,000 people myself. I have very good relations with Rich Stanek, the Hennepin County Sheriff, Matt Bostrom, the new Ramsey County Sheriff, and Studnicka, the Sheriff down in Scott County. I keep close tabs on what's going on. I listen to their concerns, if they have any, and we kind of disseminate that through the gun rights group so that we're always kind of up on top of what law enforcement really thinks, not what the press reports they think.
Exactly, and there's a big difference.
Yes.
Very
Line
big
police
difference.
officers, I've got cops' phone numbers in my cell phone. I was just at lunch with a couple of cops. They are so supportive of people carrying guns because they know who the real problem is. They're not worried about pulling over Oldie and Lena, and Lena's got a 38 in her waistband or something. They know who the problems are. But what the press does is report the comments made by chiefs of police who are politically motivated because they work for either the city council, the mayor, or both. So a lot of misconceptions in the public about